Hey, thanks for joining the Snelling Forging the Future podcast. I'm here talking with Grizz, CEO of Water. Grizz, thanks so much for being on the call today.
Well, I'm very happy to, Bennett. How are you doing today?
I'm living the dream. Thanks for asking. And yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good. Okay, well, we're going to be diving into your leadership, your insights on how you've built successful teams over at Water. Can you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do there?
Sure. Water has developed, based on some really cool tech out of a bunch of universities and Los Alamos National Laboratory, a way to treat industrial wastewater so it can be reused either at the plant or even for agriculture or to help recharge local supplies. And it's all based on these nano-coated filtration media that are reusable. So essentially what we're doing is minimizing the amount of waste, minimizing the amount of media used, and concentrating all the bad contaminants together so that they can be easily destroyed.
Wow. It sounds like amazing and very important work. Sounds like it's going to change the course of
We hope
the
so.
way we use waste and things like that.
Yeah, I mean it's the equivalent of recycling aluminum cans.
Right.
It has that kind of potential. So
That's a huge weight to it.
yeah,
Okay, that's awesome. Could you walk us through your company's journey? Where did it start and what's driven your growth over the years?
my sister and I have been partnered up for the last 20 something years, commercializing tech out of the Department of Energy. Deb came and said, "Look, we should be doing something in water," and the question
Uh,
is what. Most municipal water, freshwater, wastewater systems are kind of boring. There's a lot of construction, a lot of concrete, not a lot of room for innovation there,
mm,
because they're pretty well understood. They have lots of time and they have lots of land. But then we discovered this whole other sector called industrial wastewater, where that might be a chemical manufacturer, that might be a refinery, and they have modest amounts of wastewater, but it's highly contaminated with things like benzene or maybe some radioactive materials. And so we found out that most of that water was being hauled off and burned or buried miles below the Earth's surface to sort of get treated over millions of years. And that there was this unique need to provide a machine that could sit in the corner of the factory and just make clean water, and hopefully it'll get to the point where it's like oh, that's the generator, that's the drill press, that's the X water machine, pumping out clean water. What this also does, though, is reduce the reliance of industry on all the freshwater resources, allowing more water for the community and for growing food and for animals and people. And in some areas, that's kind of a big deal. Water stress and water drought is all over the world in some of the wackiest places you wouldn't expect. And so access to clean water to make sure we can sustain, the population and do the things that we want to do is a huge problem and only going to get worse as the climate continues to change over the coming decades. So Deb and I went and met with some of our folks at Los Alamos, and turns out they had invented this really cool way of dealing with industrial wastewater. And then we, got some more tech from different universities and started a little company in Golden, Colorado to build these machines. It took years to take the tech from the lab and put it into a commercial system, test the commercial system, and then feel confident enough to go sell. So, this is not a short-end product. It's not like software. Doing physical goods, you've got 3 to 6 month supply chain issues, just the sort of robustness of the machine to survive in outdoor environments, which is necessary for like mining operations. All of that had to be designed, engineered, tested. And we did it with kind of the minimum amount of money because we wanted to keep the equity in the company for the 5 founders and for the employees and what I call sort of the greater group of a couple dozen people that work on the project, but do so when they're needed. So,
yeah.
for instance, we don't need a full-time chemical engineer. We need them a few hours a week. We don't need a full-time process engineer or, somebody that works on SCADA systems. And so there's quite a lot of people involved in the project, but our overhead is really modest. And I think, especially in sort of less sexy industries, I think clean tech is sexy, but a lot of people don't. It's difficult to get the attention of risk capital. We have unknown outcomes. We didn't know how long it was going to take. We knew the science
Right.
worked, but turning that into engineered product, we couldn't tell them how long it was going to take. And so raising money from high net worth individuals, using crowdfunding, and raising money when you had a specific project need was how we built the company. We didn't say
Mm.
we need $5 million. We said we need $500,000, and then now we need $1 million to do this piece, and then we're going to open up a commercial treatment facility outside of Denver and test our own gear. So it will be $250,000 for that. So it's been a real sort of constant journey to
Yeah.
attract customers, build the products, and test everything and raise money and do so in sort of a organic or piecemeal manner.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like an intense way to get a company started. When we spoke previously, you described yourself, and I appreciated this metaphor, as kind of like a movie producer.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you describe that relationship that you and Sarah have to this company?
Deborah. But yeah,
Deborah.
we look at ourselves more of akin to a movie producer, but a small independent producer. So if you're Marvel, and you say, okay, well now we're going to go pursue this character, and we kind of this guy's going to write it, and then here's 100 or $250 million. That's your budget, and don't go over it. That's more of a
Hmm.
conventional startup if they can get the attraction of a venture capitalist, and they might do it over phases. There's a series, seed series, series A, series B, whatever. But with us, it's sort of like, okay, we've got enough film in the camera. Let's go test out some actors. Okay, now we need money to go actually finish the script. And then now we need money to build the sets. And so the neat thing for the investors, though, is, we're building value along the way. So, at the beginning, we were worth a couple $1 million, and now we're worth 15 times that. The
Sure.
early investors have seen their, their stock appreciate over time. And since, like a movie maker, our whole goal is to put it out to the world, we're not
Right.
trying to build, a company with 1,000 people in it. We're proving the product works, the business model works, the audience likes it, and then somebody else is going to handle distribution and making the video game derivations and maybe the sequel. Our whole thing is tech commercialization. That's a very specific skill, something that we've been doing for 35 years. It is way different than, say, what you do, which is, help companies set up a robust staff, right? We're much more likely to use Snelling to find us, a manager or a director or a specific kind of skill, knowing
Right.
that that person's probably going to stay with the company after we sell it. So where
Right.
Snelling comes in for us is, the ability for us to put in permanent employees. The early guys, like myself and a couple of our engineers, we don't have any interest in setting up manufacturing in Malaysia. That's not our skill set.
Right.
We're the more creative side of it. And it's just a different skill. So knowing where you fit, it's kind of difficult for entrepreneurs. When I was younger, I wanted to take a company in Seattle and be a, listed NASDAQ CEO. I have no desire to do that now.
Yeah.
After I've seen the impact that, social media has on stocks, I don't want to fight that level of silliness, that randomness. So building a good, solid company that's got products that are, you understand they're repeatable, you understand the cost model people want, and that you can, put what the next features are into those products on a continued basis. That is a very cool way to run a company.
Yeah, it sounds like a unique position. Speaking of actors, what does your ideal team member look like? And maybe this connects to what you mentioned about it not needing a lot of full-time staff.
Well, I think that when you get started, you need, sort of the base set, and they have to be everyman, right? So we had,
Okay.
some really experienced people, and still do, that there were founders and people that started the company, with decades of experience. Then you kind of get into this phase where, well, I need somebody to run the lab. And
Mhm.
that could be somebody who's just got a degree in chemistry, or somebody that's been working in a chemical analysis laboratory for 25 years that never went to college, right? So you have to kind of balance out, what is the job and what is needed. That doesn't always mean a college degree. It either means the ability to learn or already having that knowledge. And now what we're trying to do is get them to learn about the company and the culture and our products and how we see things. Because we parachuted into water treatment. I mean, our last company was nuclear power. We didn't know anything, which is kind of cool because we came in with no expectations about how things work,
Yeah.
and we had to learn from the ground up. And so everything to us was, why did they do it this way? And along the way, you find out there's lots of sort of, because we've always done it that way, kind of approaches. And it's hard to innovate when you're in the industry that way. If you're a large water, tech company or water treatment company, do you know how to make money? Why would you want to dramatically change how you do everything? But with us, we're taking brand new technology. It's been well tested, but it's brand new. It's 10 years old. In water treatment, new is less than 50 years old.
Sure.
And applying it in kind of a innovative way. So we need kind of jack of all trades people or people that can think that way. Let me give you an example. So we're hiring up a manufacturing manager whose background is in biologics, but he knows chemistry and he worked for a brewery, several
Mm,
breweries, and helped them build their brewery. So we know that he's going to be kind of a go get 'em person. It's not somebody that's waiting to be told what to do. It's somebody that can actually, we can say, okay, here's the build list for a machine. And so long as you don't screw up the quality of the product coming out, yeah, let's talk about innovating. Let's talk about doing things that you think are better because we designed it based on one set of perspectives and then criteria that the customers gave us. But that doesn't mean it has to stay that way forever. And I'm talking about little things like valves and sort of controllers and things like that. The fundamental science, the tech isn't going to change.
right. That's super interesting. So you mentioned that they need to be everymen coming in,
In the
people who have
early startups, yeah. And if you were working for an IT startup and you said, all I know how to do is write Python, and if they needed somebody to sit there and write Python 80 hours a week, they put you in that desk, great. But if you wanted to have a leadership role in a startup, you'd be like, look, I know these six
yeah,
languages and I could do networking if I'm pushed, and by the way, I cook a
right.
mean omelet, I mean, you have to have
Yeah, yeah.
skills that are pretty broad. And
Yeah.
that includes being able to write, being able to communicate effectively, get along with people.
Mhm.
We've had a couple of folks that we had to let go because they couldn't stand the pressure of we're going to work 15 hours today and then everybody's off tomorrow. We'll just take off. They didn't like that. They wanted to come in, clock in at 9 and leave at 5. And, you know, I mean, even startup restaurants aren't that way.
Right.
You know,
No, it makes sense.
if you're going to work for
It
a new
makes sense.
organization, it's a completely different kind of deal.
Yeah, you have to be willing to be very flexible. So at what point in mixed water do people need to start niching more and focus more on their specific
As you
position?
grow, and if you're, let's say you're an early employee and you were that programmer that could do some networking, you'd have to make a decision at some point. Am I going to focus on programming, or do I really want to go run the test lab, or do I want to apply to be the networking person? Those people, or leave. Right? I mean, that's perfectly viable because everybody that comes into our company has, the opportunity to purchase shares at a discounted rate. When we sell the
Mm,
company, those shares become very valuable, and that's the upside. The next set of people coming in are going to be more conventional employees. Whoever acquires this may or may not have an employee stock option plan, but you're not going to get a 15 times valuation increase in 4 years like we did.
right.
It's going to be more stable. And with that stability and formality, you don't have to have bureaucracy, but formality comes more specialization. And
Yeah.
that means that, you've got sufficient work to where the guy running the chem lab focuses on that and is no longer also the person that's cutting, social media videos when they have time, right? They're just focused on the chem lab. And so that change in the kind of people and certainly the skill set is not easy always to identify. And I have an expression that, like we need to get a real engineer on that. You know what I mean? Like not,
Right, right, right.
and what I mean by that is somebody that's done this before in other places, not, my engineering skills. And I'm not an engineer, right? But I can come up with enough of it and get enough advice to get the first and second version of the product out. So, we're going to have a real accountant now. We're going to have a real, and that's when the more conventional career opportunities come to a startup. And that also comes incidentally, with growth. We have one rule between Deborah and I. Our saying is, if we ever need an HR manager, we're leaving because that means we have like more than 100 people, and that's not us anymore. We've been in our own startups that were hundreds of people, and you didn't know who anybody was, and you kind of lost sight of why you were there, and that's just not how we're made up. So the
Is that
same. Go ahead.
Well, I wouldn't have wanted to cut you off from something important. I'm just wondering, is that a logistical thing, or is that like a personality,
It's a
a
personality
feature
thing.
between
We
the
you
2
know,
of
we've
you?
been really independent our whole careers, and, I mean, even if we're in charge, we don't like dealing with interpersonal issues, politics, someone's
Right.
sick kid. I mean, I don't have time for that. We're already working on a couple other startups,
Right. Wow.
at least nights and weekends. And we've got some ideas and, it's our focus is on Water, but this is number 9 for me. And I'm 61. I bet I got 2 or 3 more startups in me before I'm going to want to, like go teach or something that's more.
Sure. Have most of your startups been around that 8 to 10-year mark,
No,
like, that
no,
you've
because I'd be
stayed?
100 years old now. But some lasted 6 months, and burned down and fell into the swamp. Some took a lot longer. The first software company I was involved in, we started in '92. I was out 8 years later, but that was a hard eight
Yeah.
years because I was in my 20s. Uh, and then I've had companies last 6 months, 4 years, 5 years. About half made money for the investors, half burned down and fell into the swamp. So, we're batting 500. With Water, we know there's a need. We know we're kind of in a unique position from a technical standpoint. And we're also covering part of the market the big companies don't care about. A
Mm.
couple $100,000 for a machine. And, they don't get out of bed for less than 20 million. And they're waiting for that request or quotation to come out, and everybody works on it for 3 months, and everybody turns it in, and whoever's got the best offer wins, and then they start pouring concrete. That's not what we do.
Right.
It's a different kind of water treatment. And it's much more exciting. We have one potential customer right now that's trying to get their arsenic level at a mine that's lower than it's almost the point where you can't detect it. That's
Mhm.
difficult to do. But the
Right.
reason they've got to do it is because the state doesn't want a buildup of arsenic
Mhm.
because it's surface water. And they don't want to turn around and have a pond that's completely full of arsenic. And over time, all the readings are small, but because it's not going to go anywhere together, now we've got this big arsenic soup. Not a lot of companies will spend time working with somebody like that because it really is, like a $200,000 system. But we're a startup, so revenue counts. But the other thing is we want to have that kind of reputation that we sort of call ourselves water doctors, that we're willing to take on the hard cases. We definitely have the support of, these fantastic world-class scientists from Los Alamos, University of New Mexico, University of Texas, our own knowledge that we've gained over time. And so we can take the time as a startup to go solve problems that other people can't because we know that that's a huge hole in the marketplace and nobody's been able to fill it. So, getting arsenic down to non-detect is very tough. It's natural. It's everywhere, and that's the problem.
Right.
It shows up in the weirdest places. So if we can crack that nut from a technical standpoint, then that may be a whole new product line opportunity for us. And because you don't know what's going to make you a valuable company, you pursue everything.
Mm.
Within the focus that you're doing, but it's not like I'm going to turn down somebody from Walmart who calls me and says they've got a processing facility and they've got some nasty water because Walmart wasn't a customer prototype that we came up with, when we were doing our stereotypical customers. It's really
Yeah.
more about the water than it is about the vertical market or even the geographic location. We've already done work in Latin America and in China. So you have to be willing to, what's the name of that movie? Everything All at Once,
Everything
Everywhere
everywhere
All at
all
Once, which I
once,
still
yeah.
didn't really get, but I like the title. And that's the exciting thing about working in startups and scale ups, which is where we are now. Startup, Steve Blank says, is a bunch of guys looking for a revenue model. We know our revenue model. It's selling machines and the associated services around it. And the price point and everything is pretty well established. So now we're scaling up more
Mm.
conventional sales. And that takes a different kind of perspective too. So we are going to hire like a real sales manager, not
Right.
not a kid out of college who thinks water is cool to make some phone calls, right? I mean, it's hiring those specialized skills. And again, that's why when we first started talking to you, we thought, well, this is a great relationship for us because Snelling's been around since my dad's days in business. And
Yeah.
it's a reliable company that you can go to help you manage your talent acquisition.
Yeah. We try to maintain that standard that was set way back then, and I think it's interesting that there's a parallel between your approach to hiring in the early phase of a startup and your approach to keeping kind of a diverse set of services, like being open to taking on different clientele because as long as it's within your wheelhouse, because you don't know exactly what's gonna be the big moneymaker, what's gonna be where you'll land completely.
Yeah, and it could be something stupid too. I mean, you just never know. Something that we think is really
Sure, there's
easy,
risk and all.
but other people are like, "Wow, that's the coolest version of this really easy thing." We do as a team have a reputation for trying to split atoms. I mean, we were in early imaging, in the '90s using, you know, instead of JPEG, we were using a completely different method of compressing images using wavelet transforms, and don't even get into what wavelet transforms are, but they were hard because of the computing power. But the result was cool. And now they're standard. They're built into the X-ray, file format. If you go get an X-ray at the hospital, there's a standard built in a tiny way based on some stuff we did nearly 30 years ago. So that ability to sort of switch doesn't mean you're not focused. Sometimes I think investors are like, well, it sounds like you're all over the place, Chris. You ever heard of Slack? Slack. Slack's owned by Salesforce now, I think. Well, Slack started out as an inter-office communication for a bunch of guys working on a video game. You don't hear about the video game, but you sure know about Slack and its multi-billion-dollar acquisition. They took some code that was really just for their own use and turned it into a product. So that's what
Wow.
I mean by being open to possibilities. When we first started, we were just treating for hydrocarbons. Now we can treat for almost any kind of chemical contaminant, and recover things like rare earth minerals and metals, metalloids, radioactive materials, sulfur compounds. So we expanded that out to provide a more complete treatment train. That was not in our first business plan.
Hmm.
As we saw opportunity, we evolved and we evolved our perspective. As an entrepreneur, you have to be open to that. That's sort of the definition of being an entrepreneur. If you want to have a conventional career, that's most of the market. Go do it.
Right.
But if you want to do something that people maybe haven't done this way or ever done, and you're willing to take the risk, then you've got that mindset that allow you to work in new companies, new ventures, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a high-tech startup or, a construction company that's got one backhoe.
Yeah, this is all really interesting. I think it's funny to reflect on how we at Snelling are a smaller team, and because we're in hiring, and that's like the very broad scope that we work through, we could work on anything and help anybody. It's important to niche and to have things that we're specifically good at, but it's kind of a similar point to what you've been mentioning. Well, that's fantastic. Another question I had was have there been any big changes in the water treatment industry since you entered it 10 years ago?
Besides us, there's been a few innovations, and here's the problem, right? There has been a ton of academic innovations
Mm,
that for lots of reasons will never hit mainstream markets. There are better ways to
mm,
do everything, but maybe there's some risk associated with them, or they only work at certain pHs, or they only work with certain temperature water. And so coming up with something where you've got an innovation that will work in almost any part of water treatment, even though you're focused on industrial wastewater, that's completely different. So lots of innovation, but not a lot of success. And part of that is because the main, our sector is, I don't know, $240 billion a year, but water is trillions of dollars, right? And
mm.
so people want space ready tech for municipal systems. Space ready means 2 or 3 generations old enough to put up in a spaceship. You don't want to
Yeah,
you don't want to put new tech up in a spaceship.
right.
It's got to have been the hell beaten out of it. If you're feeding drinking water to people, it's one reason we're not in drinking water, right? Because we don't want the liability, but also because we've got our niche in industrial wastewater conversion. So we don't build fit for purpose water.
Mm,
So if you've got some dirty water from a steel mill and you're just trying to reuse it for the next round of cooling off the hot steel,
right,
well, the treatment is not going to be the same than if you wanted to take that water and put it on wheat, right? And so your
right.
cost profile, how long we treat it, what we do with it is going to be different. And that
Right.
prescriptive approach is different than mainstream, even municipal sewage. Let's say you've got fresh water. If you've got arsenic or you've got benzene in that water, you're probably not going to use it for drinking water, right?
Right.
So those kind of things don't come up in municipal systems. They do come up out farms, mines, cattle operations, oil and gas operations, factories, right? With an island of their own, you know, sort of situation, their own idiocy. It's like, well, we use processed water and we use it to cool off coal. Oh, that's making coke. All right. So all the stuff that's on the heated coal is now in the water. And it's some of the, it's like all the bad parts of the Bible built up into this water. And so what are you going to do with it? And, acquiring new water is really expensive. So we better treat it.
Yeah.
So, that getting back to your comment about HR, we're in water treatment, you're in, people. And so it's
Right.
not like you're going to turn down a job because you've never placed a chemist before.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Same idea. Same idea. So as far as focus and specialization, industrial wastewater, there we are. If you want to do drinking water, that's not something we do. You want to do municipal waste, that's not something we do. We don't pour concrete. We build machines that come on the back of a semi and you plug them into the wall and start cleaning water.
Right. I ought to be asking more hiring questions, and I'll have a couple more before we're done, but I'm very curious. Do you think X Water will ever the technology will be old enough that you might wanna do, like, food safe water? I don't know what the proper term would be there, like.
The thing is, you could take our output water and apply
Mhm.
conventional stuff to get it there already.
Sure,
Right.
okay.
The question
Yeah.
is whether or not we're going to do it. There are very specialized companies that do like pharmaceutical waters, both input and output. We've heard the stories about, antibiotics ending up in the water supply. So, there was a rush to solve that problem. There's some innovation. It's not something that we had any tech around and really any interest in doing. So we never showed up there.
Mm.
Um, it was a wacky one we had. Oh yeah, this guy wants, and he's doing it now, take one of our systems, run around, get water coming out of oil wells, and
Mhm.
recover lithium. Okay, I don't want to be a lithium recovery company. That's not what we do. Our investors would kill us if I said I'm going to go after rare earth minerals, but we have the enabling technology for that, and so you just have to use our machines. And it's because of an accident of the way our machines work that you can get that stuff back.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I guess you'd be if y'all ever did go that way, you'll have been in artificial intelligence by that point, right? Like, you'll be moving on to the next thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a big fan of these learning algorithms and large language models. When the machine wakes up and is sentient, then that's artificial intelligence. I don't think we actually want that. I know AI
Well, yeah.
is a diminutive, easy way to say what we're doing, but we've had learning algorithms, we've had genetic algorithms and large
Sure.
language models for decades. Somebody figured out a way to make them really efficient. I use them all the time because there's a library of hundreds of academic papers that my
Right.
personal chat GPT now has, and I can ask it questions. And that is almost always it's right. I mean, I have to check the resource to make sure I'm not saying something wrong and actually go read the paper. But man, the ability to drill down on that saves me hours.
Sure. Well, and that's the hope, isn't it? Is that it won't, like, ideally, it wouldn't lessen our critical thinking skills, but it would just elevate those who are already doing the important work to be able to do it faster and
A
to
super fast search engine is the way I
accuracy.
look at it, because I used to ask
Yeah,
I used to ask
definitely.
the Google machine all kinds of stuff, and it was like, I have no information, or it takes me to somebody's webpage, and,
Right.
I would like something approaching an answer, and I'm getting that now. Although I gotta tell you, it would be great if these algorithms could figure out how to, clean my house, and so I have time to write. I'd
Totally,
rather
totally.
be that way, but, we are where we
I've
are.
seen I've seen those jokes online where it's like, AI is now doing art while I do manual labor and
Right.
clean my house, and
Right.
I would really love that to be the reverse. It would be great, but okay, well, I'm veering off here.
It's
I'm
okay. Yeah, I
really enjoying picking your brain.
so as your office and your outreach is growing, how have you seen in northern Colorado or in Colorado in general, there was a time where you couldn't swing a dead cat and not get a job offer a couple years ago. It's not like
Right.
that now. So what's caused that? What's going on? Is it the International economy? Is it tariffs? What's happening?
Well, I don't want to pretend that I have the big answers there, but certainly there have been it's a client's market like you were referring to right now. There's way more people looking for work than there are people hiring. And a lot of people were holding their breath up until the last election, as most industries do, to see what's going to happen and what's our bottom line going to look like. And I feel like that's still kind of holding up. We live in unprecedented times. I know that's a phrase that's kind of a buzz phrase that people use a lot, but
Yeah.
it really is hard to predict right now. So I think people are just really holding their breath, trying to keep their cards close to their chest and keep the team that they have happy instead of adding new work. I'm hoping that's going to switch around soon because there's a lot of people looking for work. In the meantime, our service transitions from finding like specific people and skill sets to sorting through a wide sea of people for the most top quality candidate for that fits companies and things like that. I know that's not exactly the question you'd asked, but
No, it's okay.
that's
And
where I'm
I'm
coming up with.
curious. You guys obviously have some language model looking at applicants and making some summary ideas.
Well, we actually have not implemented anything like that yet. We like
Really?
keeping our human eyes on people's resumes. It's easy enough to use the control find feature to look at keywords and things like that. And just so far, we've used AI. Don't get me wrong, in some other ways, some exciting ways to quicken the submittal process, to make internal communications a little more streamlined, things like that. Note taking is mostly what I use it for, but that's one thing I haven't let go of yet is just looking at people's resume. Anybody who comes in through our system, they're going to have a person's eyes on their resume and their cover letter and things like that. That's just what we kind of value as of now.
That's a market position, Bennett. You guys ought to be capitalizing on that. We still hire people based on humans, not
Right.
machines. I mean,
Yeah.
that's huge because there are courses now about how to put your resume in the perfect format so it's machine readable by this standard or that
Really.
standard. So Indeed will even recognize you.
Right. Yeah.
If you're still doing human to human hiring or
Hmm.
referrals or sorting for companies, that I think it's a huge thing for you to market on because
Yeah.
companies don't want what the machine said. They want a recommendation from somebody who's actually, got skill at figuring out how people might work in there.
Yeah. I think that's a very astute way to put it. And I hope you can trust that I'm going to take this straight to our team meeting
You
this
should.
afternoon, and we'll be talking about that. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I got to ask you just one more, I think, and then we can bring this conversation close to a close. Which is, are there any mistakes or missteps in hiring, or just generally as a startup entrepreneur, that you would advise people against, or give people a warning against?
The number of mistakes I've made is a whole book on its own, right? And the mistakes are experience, so it's a very
Yeah.
valuable thing that I have over my whatever 35-year career so far. I will tell you one thing that I fall victim to all the time. I tend to hire my friends because I know them and I love them and I want them to be involved. I'm so excited about my thing, want them to be involved. And it's much better to make friends with people after you've hired them than to hire your friends. There are people that don't talk to me anymore because I had to be the boss. We were great friends, then I had to be the boss, and they fell out of my life. And so that is probably the number one lesson I'll tell you. It's not keep your personal and your business life separate. As an entrepreneur, there is no line there. It's the same thing.
Mm,
I mean, I'm sorry,
right.
but that's the way I do it. I'm not going to not tell this group of 6 people I'm working with that, my dog died or something. I mean, that's insane. You're in a tight knit group. You end up becoming friendly and sometimes friends. And actually, that's how you get some amazing stuff done because you want to support each other. You want to make sure that everybody succeeds. That kind of family approach is again way different than if you've got a more mainstream company. But hiring your friends has always been a mistake of mine, and so we've fortunately stopped it with this company. And maybe because I have no friends left. No, I'm just kidding. I have lots of friends, and they do lots of stuff, and they think it's great. We're doing water treatment, but
Yeah.
they're not interested in what we're doing. They're
Yeah.
they're off doing their own career, their own lives, and that's cool because now I have a bunch of friends, and I'm not the boss.
Right.
So
That's a super tough one, and that I feel like somebody's written a book on it, I'm sure,
yeah.
is navigating friendships and workplace relationships. And
Yeah,
yeah,
because
and I think it's better off that you create friendships out of workplace relationships than
yeah.
the reverse, but that's a tough one.
Well,
That's a good thing to keep your eye.
it's like a band,
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
bands break up because of interpersonal conflicts and because they're so close and they're living and traveling together and stuff like that. It's just too much at some point. So you have to be able to step back and let
Mhm.
everybody have their own life. You know,
Right.
with some of my companies, we might as well have been living in the same house, when we started it, and mayhem ensued, you know.
Yeah,
So,
I could see that being the case.
yeah, you know, so anyhow, you be friendly with the people you hire. Don't hire your friends. How's that?
I think that's a great tagline.
Yeah.
I think I got, just 1 or 2 more wrap-up questions. What's next for Water? How can people learn more about what you're doing?
Well, we decided to let the community. We call ourselves community funded. We have about 2,600 small investors instead of like one VC, which has both its plus and minuses, but I'll take the minuses from too many. So we're raising money now on Start Engine. You just go to startengine.com, look up IX Water, and you'll find us. That again, we're raising money when we need it. This is like the fifth time we raised money, and this round is to help us do two things. One, build some demonstration machines we can actually take to factories
Right.
because we're new. People want to try it on their own water. And they don't want to necessarily take the risk of spending $500,000, $1,000,000, or even $100,000 buying a machine that won't work for them. And it's more than just treating the water to a spec. There's all kinds of work for them that goes into this. Will it fit in with their environment, their manufacturing, their workflow? And then the second thing is to hire that sales manager and pursue aggressively our customers. And the neat thing is that all our potential customers are regulated by some government entity and it's on a list on the internet. We have
Nice.
no problem with leads, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's like you guys. I bet you can get a list of everybody who's got a corporation here in Colorado, and that's your prospect list. Now, turning them into leads is a completely different thing. So that's what we need, a couple more people to
Right.
do that, to help us do that. But as far as manufacturing, we've got that figured out. Supply chain, we've got that figured out. We know how to build the machines, we know how to deploy them. Now what we need to do is scale up to more mainstream customers. And those are customers that the company that acquires us will be looking for to value our
Mhm.
company when we sell the company. So that's our final phase. It's like the fifth phase in building a startup, and that's going mainstream.
Super exciting. I'm wishing you all the best. I'm sure that y'all are gonna change the world with this technology, and I'm super excited to see it. Grizz, is there anything else you wanna say to the people out there? Any social medias you wanna plug before we
Yeah,
bring this
again,
up?
we our social media is a reflection of the team because everybody does it, and I mean, God, it's
Right.
so easy now to throw a 30-second video out. So we're on all the social medias. Just look up IX Water. By the
Okay.
way, IX is not ion exchange, although we do a little of that. It's a reference to the planet Ix in Dune. And Ix was where all the cool technology came from.
Cool.
Yes, I get to name things. That's my favorite thing to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love Dune. Well, I've only seen the movies, I gotta read the
Well, at
books.
the beginning of David Lynch's Dune from '84, the guild navigator comes in and says, "We've just folded space from Ix." And Ix was where they built all the big spaceships and all the on the edge of being legal technology, and that's the way we look at ourselves,
Right.
kind of the big powerhouse of innovation.
I think that's an awesome, name and indicative of the level of success we should expect from y'all, and I'm super excited to see it. Well, Grizz, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining the call, and I'll bring this conversation to a close.
Thanks, Bennett.
Alrighty.